Chelsea here from A Frugal Homestead. Our project today is a holiday project, and we are going to make a quilt as you go stocking. So it's a fun quilted stocking that you can use fabric scraps for, and it is lined, has a handle and everything, but just the front piece is quilted. Now you could do both the front and the back quilted, but it is a little bit time consuming once you get started, so I just like this front piece. So let's go ahead and get started. You can start out by printing the free stocking pattern. The link is in the description, so go get the pattern. You're going to need it for this, or you could create your own if you want to. Okay, so for this project you are going to need to cut 2 pieces of lining for your fabric. They can be a holiday print, or they can just be whatever you have lying around. I know a lot of us just have a fabric stash. Just make sure you're cutting mirror images so that you have the front and the back of the stocking. Don't cut them both the same direction. You're also going to need to cut a back piece for your stocking so that you have a back for the actual quilted stocking. Then you're going to need to cut a piece of batting for your stocking. Now for this project, your batting should actually be about a 1/2 inch wider than your actual stocking pattern. And that's just so that you have enough room for the quilting. And then you want to cut one more stocking piece that is out of a light colored material. It could be white, it could be cream, but something that you're not going to be able to see through because you're going to be putting your quilt pieces on top of the batting, or excuse me, on top of this white piece in the batting. Hopefully that makes sense, and it will as we get going here. So I'm going to take the back of my stocking and my 2 lining pieces and just set them aside for the time being. We're going to focus on our stocking piece. So again, my batting piece is about a 1/2 inch wider than my actual stocking. And again, that's just to make the quilting a lot easier to do. All right, let's talk about the front of the stocking, the actual quilted part of the stocking. So as you see on the example here, there's lots of different sections of different fabrics. These can just be scrap pieces of material. The only caveat is they need to at least be able to span the distance, the width of your stocking pattern. So it doesn't have to be huge pieces. They can be wide, they can be thin. It really doesn't matter. It'll give it a different look, and that's kind of the fun part about this project. So you can kind of see over here, I've already cut several different pieces of scrap material, just so you don't have to sit here and watch me cut them all. But we're gonna go ahead and cut one with you so you can kind of see how I did it. So I have this green material here. It's very pretty. I just have folded it into sections here. And I'm going to cut this one at 1.5 inches just because I'm doing various sizes of my material. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a whole lot of anything. And I'm just cutting one because I have like 12 to 15 different fabrics. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that many fabrics. If you wanted to, you could just do, 5 or 6, maybe even 9, and then repeat your pattern at some point. But it is kind of fun to have lots of different fabrics. It just kind of gives it its own unique little flair. And that's the fun part about this project. You can do a lot. You could really personalize them with the type of material that you use. All right, I think we are ready to sew. So we can see here, I have my batting and my white stocking on top. Now, I have all of these different materials here. I don't really have a rhyme or reason how I want to put them on. The original one that I was sewing, I couldn't really decide, so I kind of just did a little bit of everything. Okay, so I'm just going to take whatever I want to start with at the top, and I'm actually going to just put it across, and then I'll trim it down. Makes it a little bit easier to get into this sewing machine. So this piece of fabric I'm going to line up with the top of my white piece of stocking, not my batting, my white stocking. The batting just gives it some extra thickness, a little more structure. I'm going by the white stocking. The white stocking is what matters. So when I'm looking to make sure that my material is fitting on my stocking, I want to make sure it spans from the one side of the white to the other side. All right, I'm going to put it right into my machine just like this at the top, 1/4 of an inch, which is the edge of my presser foot, and I'm stitching. I just keep it lined up just like that. I don't have to back stitch or anything because I'll be stitching all of this together a little bit later. So there's my top piece. Okay, now from here on out, this one is right side up. From here on out, everything's going to be right sides together. So I'm going to go from this piece, and I'm going to use kind of this cream with kind of gold accent. Let's see if this one's actually wide enough. Yeah, let's use that one. Okay, and I'm going to take the raw edge of this cream and match it up with the raw edge of the green, just like that. And I'm going to stitch those two together. Now this is where it gets kind of tricky on how you put it in your machine. You can go this direction, you can go this direction, but eventually it all kind of gets messy. So pick one way and start there. Now on this one, because I'm sewing this direction, I'm actually lining the edge of the raw edge of my fabric to the edge, the opposite edge of my presser foot. It's still 1/4 of an inch, still works. It's just kind of backwards, and that's okay. Okay, trim my threads here. Okay, and then this is where you're gonna go to your iron. You're going to fold this edge down and press the seam you just made. So now I've quilted this piece to this piece. So it's kind of like paper piecing without the actual paper. Okay? So now I'm going to go to my next fabric, and I have this cute like holiday words red fabric. I'm going to trim this one down just a little bit, just because the tails kind of get in the way after a while. Okay. And for this one, I'm going to keep it straight still, but the next one we're going to go on a diagonal. So I'm going to put it in my machine here again, about 1/4 of an inch, just sew across. I match those bottom raw edges together, cut my threads, that way I don't have like all these little threads everywhere, and press. Now make sure as you're using the material, whatever you use, if it has a direction, so this is directional fabric, all the words are right side up. So if I had flipped this, they would be upside down. So that's something definitely to look at. Make sure your pattern goes the correct direction. All right, we're gonna do I want to do these snowflakes? I kind of want to do this one maybe. Let's do this one. It's still black, adds a little bit of depth, but this one now we're going to put on a diagonal. So I'm still going to start over here in this corner, but I'm going to make the material kind of go at a slight diagonal to the red material. Oops, on the first one. Get this back up here. So I'm going to start over on this side and then have it go, you can kind of see at a diagonal this time. Okay? It's still going to cover the white, so we're going cover my stocking. But it adds just a little bit of interest, so it's not just straight up and down lines. Now, can you do that? Sure. If you want it to be really straight, and that's just fine. Nothing wrong with that. But I kind of like this. And it also kind of takes the pressure off if everything doesn't line up perfectly straight, which is always nice. All right, the next one here. Trim this guy down just a bit. It's kind of a green. Now, if we wanted to, we could go the opposite direction and go at a diagonal. Like this. So let's try it out, see how it goes. As long as we're staying within the boundaries of that white stocking, we can kind of do whatever we want, because that's what's helping us know where we should put things. Just cut some tails off here. Okay, I have a lot of green going on, so I'm going to go ahead and maybe add a little red, or you know what, let's go with this gold. I really like this gold. It's kind of simple. I like that. Looks nice. Kind of helps bring out some of the different colors and kind of the gold trim in here. Okay, so I'm just going to keep doing that all the way down till I get to the very end. I can keep going straight, I can start doing more diagonals, but I'm just going to keep sewing this, and then we'll talk about how we attach the rest of the stocking. All right, last piece here. And I've got some pretty long pieces over here too. All right, here is our finished stocking. Okay, this is what the back kind of looks like versus the front. So now what we're going to do is we are going to take, get rid of all our little pieces there. We're going to take our stocking pattern and we're going to line up the top of the stocking to the top of where we sewed the first line, our very first piece of fabric. Okay, so that's been lined up. And now we're actually going to trim out the stocking pattern again. We're not trimming where the batting is, we're actually trimming where the stocking is. So just taking my scissors here and trimming around the pattern. Okay. And it's okay if you didn't backstitch, because we're going to stitch around the outer rim of the stocking again to ensure that all of those little strips that we sewed down will stay in place. So just trimming off all that extra. So see why it doesn't matter how big or small your strips are, as long as they go cover the white of that stocking. Come up here and just trim this top edge just a bit. All right. How much better does that look? It's not quite the mess. And you can kind of see everything a little bit better. I'm just going to take my little iron here, just press everything down one more time before I stitch the sides. Just make sure everybody is nice and flat. Right. And now I'm going to stitch 1/4 inch all the way around my stocking. Like that. Let me trim up here just a little bit more. All right. Looks so good. Isn't that beautiful? It's kind of funny because it looks like this big old mess, but then once you trim it down, it looks so much better. Okay, I'm going to take my other main fabric piece and I'm going to put it right sides together with my stocking. So this is this will be the back of my stocking, and then I have these two pieces here that will be the lining of my stocking. So I'm going to do the same thing with them. Put them together. Right sides together, just like this. Okay, so we can have them both here. Now the only difference in sewing these two things is I'm actually going to mark about a 2 to 3 inch opening on one of the straight sides of the lining stocking. I'm not going to sew this here. I'm going to leave this open so that I can turn my stocking later. So on this one I'm going to sew all the way around. Not the top, I'm going to leave the top open, but the rest I'm going to sew all the way around. And go ahead and back stitch at the beginning, and I'm sewing at a 1/2 inch, so it's a 1/2 inch seam allowance now. Now, if you're not great with seam allowances, you can always actually sew on this side because you can actually see where your original stitch was. And then you can just ensure that you don't cross it, I guess you could say. So we have this one done. Now we're going to move on to this one. So I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to sew forward and back. Once I get to my pin, forward and back. Lift, cut my threads, go to the next pin, forward, back, and then keep sewing all the way around. Some threads here. So this is my lining. There's the hole that will turn it. Now before we actually put the two pieces together, we got a couple more steps. First we need to clip. And clipping happens around curved edges of sewing projects. And just every few inches, if it's a really small, you can make them a little bit closer. You're just clipping around the rounded edges. And this makes it so that when you actually turn that stocking right side out, these edges, you can see as I pull them, they'll actually curve instead of kind of being boxy and weird. So if you've ever had a rounded project and you're just like, why is it not laying flat? It doesn't look curved, yada, yada, yada. It's probably because you didn't clip. Clipping just allows that material a little bit more room to move and helps with those curved edges. So it's an important step. I'm just going all the way around my curves here for both of those pieces. All right, one more step before we can put them together. We are going to make a little loop for the top of our stocking so that we can hang our stocking wherever you might want to hang it. So I just all right, here's our loop, and I'm just going to take a safety pin and I just put it through one side of the loop here, tuck inside, and then it'll help me pull the loop through to the opposite side. Most of the time it works. There we go. We're just turning it around here. And then I can just grab my little iron and press. And then I have a nice little loop that I can put with my stocking. All right, so now let's put all the pieces together. So I'm going to take my main stocking, so my quilted piece, and I'm going to turn it right side out. Just like this. Okay, and you can see, you don't have to do this at the moment, make it look real curved, but you can really see how those curved edges turned out really nicely because of the clipping that we did. So the main piece is right side out, the lining piece is wrong side out. Yeah. So now we're going to put the two pieces together. So I'm going to take my stocking, put it inside the lining, all the way to the bottom, like this. And I'm going to match the top edges. So I want to match my seam, my back seam of my stocking. I guess side seams is probably more like it. My side seams for my stocking. This. Then kind of just move things around. So it's like this, all the way around. Okay, and then my hanging, my loop, I'm actually going to take the pin out, put my loop in between the two layers, raw edges up, you can kind of see that, and then pin them together again. So I want my loop in between. Okay, so that's kind of what it looks like. Now we're going to sew. We're going to start on one side, go all the way around to the other. So this is kind of always a little bit tricky on getting in your machine. You can actually do it if you wanted to. You can put it over the arm of your machine like this. That makes it a little bit easier to sew. But again, you're sewing at a 1/2 inch. Making sure you're matching those edges as you sew, keeping everything nice and straight. And then just overlap your stitches at the beginning, and that counts as your back stitch, because that's all back stitching is, right? Just overlapping your stitching. Okay. Then I've got some threads to cut here. All right. Now we're going to take our stocking out through the opening we have. I'm just going to pull out the main stocking. And as I pull the main stocking out, it'll help pull the lining out and turn the lining right side up. Okay, so that's kind of what it looks like. Looks ridiculous. And there's my loop. Okay, okay, but before we put the lining back into the stocking, we want to close off the opening. Now you can totally hand stitch this. A lot of people do. I'm taking the lazy girl way, and I'm just going to put it right on my machine here and stitch it close. It's just faster to me, and nobody's going to see the inside anyway, right? Unless they decide to pull the lining out. So it's stitched up. So now I'm just going to take my hand in my lining and push it back through into my main stocking. And at this time I do want to work my fingers around the stocking to make sure the lining and the stocking line up nicely, because that's going to help it lay flatter and help the top look right, not all wonky. Okay, so everything lines up pretty good. And now I can just take my iron and press the top, making sure everything lines up. Now you kind of got what we call those kissy lips because of the way the stocking pulls. And so we're going to make sure we press real well around all of that. Make things nice and flat so that that stocking stays together. Now, at this point, if you wanted to, you for sure could top stitch around the top. You can totally do that. I'm not going to. I think it kind of takes away from the look of this particular project, but you definitely could. But there's your stocking, front and back, with your loop so that you can hang it on your fireplace or wherever you plan to put it. It's a fun project. It's a great way to use up scraps of fabric, and it's just very, very festive. And now you can make a whole boatload of them for your friends and family. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments. Otherwise, make sure to grab the pattern that's in the comments or in the description. And we will see you next time. Hope you have some happy holidays.